Hello, everyone. I'm Larry Mellon, Vertex Director of Tax, part of our Chief Tax Office at Vertex. Welcome you to our second episode of our new series, Larry Live Tax Talk for Tax Professionals. On each episode, we'll discuss tax topics that tax professionals should be aware of, include in on their ongoing tax strategies, and share the latest trends in tax landscape. On today's episode, we're joined by Mark Duclos, the Vertex Senior Global Director for Oracle NetSuite Partnerships. Mark will be sharing with us his perspective on the state of cloud technology, the benefits of utilizing cloud solutions in your tax engine, and more. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Larry, thanks for having me on the show. I'm excited to be here. Before we get into some of the things we need to think about is when we look at that financial landscape, right? Cloud technology is a term that is commonly used, but I'm here to tell you that organizations, even though they're saying cloud technology, aren't fully utilizing the cloud to serve their business needs. So I'm looking forward to covering those areas of tech growth during our discussion today.
That's great, Mark. I think everybody's going to want to get involved in this. So let's kind of dive in. So our first area I want to cover today is around what are the business benefits of a company connecting their ERP with a tax solution?
Yeah, good question or good thought, Larry, right? There's a direct correlation as to why businesses leaders want and should seriously consider connecting a tax technology solution like Vertex to an ERP. In today's business environment, organizations are faced with rapidly transforming their businesses, their platforms, and processes to meet the challenges and requirements that previously would have seemed unlikely. At Vertex, we see these challenges firsthand. We work together with our partners and our joint customers to help them understand these challenges, review those, and then provide integrated tax technology and services to help them transform and optimize their finance, tax, and compliance operations. An enterprise that utilizes a proven tax technology or tax engine with their ERP will see some of the following, Larry. A streamlined setup of tax determination, compliance, and simplified reporting, thereby accelerating the integration to the ERP. But what does that actually mean? And what does that equal, right, Larry? It's the faster time to go live, a faster time to getting back to business.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, I think a lot of that is, looking at these different avenues and areas. We could, you and I both know we could speak for quite some time on this on different areas, but I think that this just kind of gives a great overview of what that is. But do want to dive a little deeper and kind of shift gears a little bit and maybe pivot, but we can go back to that, or we certainly can talk to people more in depth on that with future episodes. What do tax teams need to be aware of during the ERP implementation process, to kind of help make this as a seamless transition for them?
Yeah, Larry, that's so something that the tax teams really need to think about is making sure that other areas of the business are at the table during this decision, right? Including the line of business, include IT, include the end users of this solution and these processes at the conversation, right? While tax is very, very important and it plays a big role in making sure that a company can report and be compliant and avoid audit risk, right? It's connected to other areas of the business, and those individuals need to be in the conversation.
Yeah, I think we talked about it often in previous episodes, and just as tax professionals, we look at this and we often are concerned with, what getting tax to the table. We always say has to have a seat at the table, that there's pretty much every transaction that
Yeah.
happens at a company has a tax effect, whether it be a taxable or even a non-taxable effect to that. There still have to be discussions about how the tax is involved with that. So that's great. So what ERP trends are companies talking about, about these inaccuracies? Are they going in more depth with these ERP people?
They are, and a big focus right now is either finance transformation, it's being called, or ERP transformation. Right, they're taking a look at what historically has been an on-premise ERP that the IT department had to maintain, the updates had to be done, and IT had to work with tax, and tax kind of had to work with IT because is on premise, it's under our roof, we could take care of it. Well, as they're either moving to the cloud or they're taking an on premise ERP and they're hosting it onto a public cloud platform, there's a lot of things that need to be considered. And a lot of the inaccuracies that are out there is that, the ERP and the tax solution, they can be done separately. They really shouldn't be, right? Because as you transform that ERP, tax needs to be part of that transformation, because when the ERP goes live, once it's on the cloud, tax has to be ready to be processed, right? And
Sure. Yeah.
collected and remitted and the like. So,
Yeah.
once again, back to what the point you just said, right, Larry? Tax and IT need to be at the table at the same time as they make these decisions.
Yeah. Understood. So I got a question from one of our viewers. Would like to know, what resources the tax and IT teams need to bring to the table to help start that whole ERP tax engine integration process.
Yeah, let me build on a little bit of what we were just talking, right? With companies moving to the cloud, they're changing from capital expenditure to operating expenditure, right? That also is a different motion for the IT department. And since IT really won't be managing the hardware and the software in a SaaS environment, let's not forget there is still a need to connect the requirements of the business with finance as well as IT.
Yeah.
So the demand for those IT individuals is still there. They're just going to be becoming more strategic inside the walls of that company, connecting the different areas of the business. And let's not forget, data lives across the enterprise, right? That customer, products, sales, inventory, that's all, that data is still needed for the end-to-end finance process, and tax is a touch point along that entire process, right?
Yeah, and when we talk about those resources, they're just simple, data. I mean, like IT has their data, tax has their data. Often the two of them don't know what each requires and what they need. So again, back to that table to understand to go through this process, it is a group effort to understand these things. And tax departments have to, certainly are aware of the risks and exposures that go with them, but they also have to kind of look through those and kind of say, what do I need? What additional information I need to be able to let the IT people build that in. So that's really good. So, um,
Yeah, let's not
so
forget, Larry, too, the customer master data, right? Which is in a
yeah,
lot of the areas, making sure that all access to that master data and that master data is clean, right?
right,
Because it'll be utilized in multiple steps, as you've said.
right. So let's kind of build onto that. Teams each need to bring an understanding of what the end result will be. We know that the end result that an IT department has or what tax are going to be different. So to ensure some of that accurate taxation, for the customers or product services, right? We kind of look at that and say, we need to have this documentation, right, for products and services. A lot of people look at documentation on the products that they're selling. They're not so much interested in services, but mapping to that tax engine is something that's really significant. You're taking that ownership, you're developing that risk to determine how do I would ensure my accurate taxation of the invoices that are going out to my customers. Now, on the flip side, I always like to chime in here and talk about the purchases. We spend a lot of time talking sales tax side, but we also have to say that we have the ability to make sure we're mapping everything accurately on the purchases that we make, right? We have to make sure we have the ability to validate the actual data that's going, the ERP and the tax engine agree. We know that there's differences sometimes between them, but we have to make sure we understand, is it an acceptable difference? Why is there a difference? Is there something that's done differently at the ERP level versus the tax level? But we have to make sure that everybody that's involved with that needs to work on these processes and document this stuff so that everybody is accountable for each side on what they're looking at. So based on that, we started the conversation, focusing on the business benefits of integrating ERP tax engine. So let's go a little to the next steps. Let's kind of talk about cloud integration. How can that help the business grow today and in the future as we look at cloud integration?
No, that's a great question, Larry. So there's a couple things that are very, very important as customers are looking to make that transformation, right? These companies and enterprises should look very, very hard at how the technologies they're going to select are integrated, right? So from the core ERP to even some of the other areas of that financial process that they may be looking. because an ERP or a finance transformation is inclusive of an ERP, procurement, e-commerce, all of the others, and tax needs to make sure that touch point is in there, right?
Yeah.
And making sure that that tax technology vendor understands the ERP that they're purchasing as well, right? Vertex has decades of experience with a lot of the ERPs that are out there, right? And with all those years of working with them, we know how the ERP is integrated into the business. So making sure that the partners understand each other so that that decision is well. That experience and knowledge is where the true business value is, right? By
Yeah.
selecting a tightly integrated tax solution, this will allow companies to save across that process and thereby maybe even having dollars to fund the integration project, which ensures a faster time to go live, right? Allows that cost savings, reducing the cash reserves for audit or penalty, allows that money to go back into the business, maybe even for the sole act of doing business.
Yeah, I think that's important just to look at, looking at that stuff, that it is important to have the two of those working together. And just from like just, from a tax side, excuse me, you know, the ability to calculate accurate invoices to your customers, right? Just getting that information out, knowing that you have a rate, you have a system that's processing these things is ideal for your risk of everything on the tax side, right? Your financial
100%.
data, do they match, right? You're going to increase the accuracy of filing return, like in taxing jurisdictions. This is ultimately, but going to reduce tax risk that you have for audit. And when I talk about audits too, I want to talk both about internal and external, because you
Okay.
certainly have to report to the leaders within your company about where you're at on this risk and stuff like that. And we all know, those people that are listening in here, you have the responsibility for compliance, but working with this ERP, it's very vital to make sure that you've followed all that stuff through and you've buttoned everything up to reduce those risks, to continue with compliance, accurately funding, and taking everything from inception of loading until the end. So that's great. So I kind of want, I know we've been talking, and Mark, like you said at the beginning, you and I could talk about this for a while, but I did want to kind of recap just some key takeaways. We did talk about some of the things with the ERP and how they have to work together. We talked about who needs to be at the table, what discussions have to have at the table, how the teams have to work together, how do we get tax at the table, how do we have IT recognize that all the transactions that they are responsible for in the company have a tax ramification, whether it be taxable or not. So working to get those people together. We also want to make sure that everybody here who's listening, looks at cloud technology, right, with their solutions. There may be different ways to do things. There may be streamlined ways to do that. So I think just between those three things, I think we've covered a lot of information today, Mark. I just want to thank you for joining me today. I know we went through things at a 30-foot level, not to mention the whole cloud joke there, but no pun intended for that. But the benefits around these solutions, right? There's detailed steps companies can take, they should consider with navigating this process, but make sure you work with your IT team and you put those steps together to make sure that each step that they have matches the steps that you have, that you ensure that you are bringing in an accurate ERP solution to work with your tax. So, with that said, that's all the time we have today. Thanks again, Mark, for your insights. Thank you for joining us today for another episode of Larry Live, Tax Talk for Tax Professionals. See you soon.